What's up, YouTube? So I recently did a video on a new plugin called Backbone, and quite a few of you guys mentioned that, oh, there are other samplers that can do these types of things. And yes, there are that can do a lot of the stuff that I explained in that video. But there's something that I purposefully left out because you can go pretty in depth with it, and I wanted to save it for its own complete video. And that is the Decompose engine that's built into Backbone. So essentially what it is you load up a sample. It allows you to split that sample into various layers using spectral processing. And you've got control over kind of how it splits the sound in two. So it's pretty cool what you can do with it, especially coupled with the Resynth engine that's built in. You can take samples of percussion and drums and easily turn them into leads and all sorts of stuff. You can reverse engineer any samples that you have and resynthesize them into pretty crazy stuff. So I'm going to try outline that in this video. Let's dive in and have a look. So just before we dive into this video, I want to quickly show you guys the sound that I made just loading up a sample that I had sampled from a handpan, which is a percussion instrument for those who don't know. So that's the original sample. The problem with traditional, sampling is as you change the pitch of the sound, it changes the timing of the sound as well. And that's a really cool thing about the ability to kind of resynthesize stuff. You can get it to kind of loop specific cycles in the waveform and all sorts of stuff, which we're going to get into a little bit later in the video. But I quickly just want to show you, using that sound, what I had created here. So, okay, it seems like there was a bit of reverb on that sound as well that I just left in the chain. But this is, what I was able to create, a pretty cool kind of chill out, plucky lead sound using that sample. And the cool thing about it is it's now pitched chromatically, and it doesn't alter the timbre of the sound too much as we play it on the keyboard, for example, like what happens when you traditionally resample something. So what I want to do here quickly is let's just initialize this real quick. I want to load in a sample. I want to use a different one so we can see what other variations we can create with this. So how it works is we load up a sample over here, and then we go over to Decompose over here. And if we click pre-listen, what it does is it basically, processes the sound. You'll actually see if you've got your sample folder loaded, it creates a duplicate called noise and temp. And it basically loads those up, and you can kind of mix between them, solo them, and have a listen to, what they sound like while you're editing these parameters. So let's just the first thing that I noticed, which is pretty cool, is it's a nice way of being able to remove hum or noise from an audio recording. So I recorded this with a microphone, so obviously there's going to be a little bit of kind of air in the recording from the environment around me, and I'm not in a perfectly soundproofed studio. So being able to just quickly remove that noise using spectral processing is pretty insane. That being said, it does kind of remove the transient of the sound. But we've got various controls as to how we, how it splits these layers. And also what we can do is we can further process it. I want to show you guys just now. Let's say, for example, split it like this for now. Let's hit apply. So here, what we can do is, because we've split the kind of noise and the tonal layer, we can jump into the envelope of the noise layer. And just for reference, you can actually view the waveform like this, and you can press auto like this, so it automatically jumps into the size of your envelope, which is pretty cool. So anyway, we can jump into our noise layer and actually just, create an envelope to cut out that noise tail to create a much cleaner sound without affecting the kind of tail of our tonal layer. How much cleaner is that? Okay, let me load the main sample here so we can A/B compare them. And I would say they sound identical to me. I mean, I can't tell the audio difference except for that little bit of noise that's missing. Let's actually just remove this layer here, delete this, and we can start working here. What I want to do is let's just, for example, save this as hand pan clean. Because we haven't really got into the kind of resynthesis and that kind of stuff. We can still dive into that, but it's cool to have a kind of like initialized preset that you can always jump to. So here, let's look at using the resynth engine on the tonal layer. Let's just solo this. So obviously with the tonal layers and stuff, it's better to use the sine wave partial generator. Here, using this purity, you've got the control over the balance of kind of harmony and dissonance. Let's maybe change the amplitude of this layer a little bit. It's a bit too loud, I think. And now we can start looking at some effects. We can add like a reverb on there to create that kind of like artificial room sound, like from the recording, but obviously, much cleaner. We don't have that kind of background noise and stuff. Okay, let's try use the resynth layer on, or this resynth method on the noise layer. And we can use a noise mode. It automatically actually enables the noise mode if you've got it once you've decomposed it, which is pretty interesting. So it's almost like a pan pipe kind of thing now that you can create. I mean, it's pretty endless what you can do by just, throwing almost any sample in there and just mashing around with some of these parameters. You can create some very, acoustically natural sounding stuff because you're using acoustically natural sound sources, but you've got incredible control just using envelopes and, the resynthesis parameters and stuff. Okay, let's look at decomposing a kick drum into different layers and editing each layer pretty in depth. So let's say, for example, we've got a kick in here. I actually made this in the last video, but I think I shaved off a little bit too much of the roll-off. Let's say I want the body of the kick to extend a little bit further over the 16th, but it's only a sample, and we want like individual control over those layers. We can try achieve that using this backbone decompose system. So let's load the sample up in here. I'm just going to mute this audio track just so I've got... Cool, so we've got the audio file loaded. Let's just dive in here a little bit so we can see exactly what's going on with the sample. So here, let's use this decompose. So the idea here is to try get it to sound as close to the original as possible, but still differentiating quite heavily on which element is which. So check this out. So I think for kicks, the default settings, they don't quite get the punchiness in the tonal layer. So you do have to adjust them a little bit with these settings. So what you can do is you can just solo this tonal layer and adjust these settings until you get a nice like oomphy low-end tone. So here, I want to show you guys the ability to loop a specific cycle in the waveform. So let's say, for example, go here, click on loop in the sample edit section, click on loop, and then we can set our loop points to where we want it in the waveform, where we want it to loop. So let me just play one note here quick. And I'm going to change our envelope. So what happens here is it's basically looping that part. And it's obviously, it sounds pretty bad because it's not snapped exactly to the zero crossing. So over here, we've actually got a parameter to snap to zero crossing. And that allows us to, very easily find these zero crossing areas. And now we can create a much longer tail on our kick drum that sounds super, super clean. I mean, obviously, this is a little bit ridiculous, the amount of tail that we've put on here now. So what we can do is we can actually just jump in. Let's just go sync, switch wave on. And let's say start rolling it off at about 1/16. And do something like this. Let's see how this works out. So another very, very cool thing about being able to split these two layers is, let's say, for example, so by default, I was programming this kick in C. But let's say, for example, we wanted to line up tonally with the fundamental key of the bass line. So I believe this track is in F sharp. So that would be transposing this C by +6. So what happens now is both of these layers basically get transposed to the F sharp. And I find that the effect is very audible on the transient layer, but less so on the tonal layer. So if we jump into the pitch section of this transient layer, we can actually turn this key follow down and then to 0. And then what happens is this noise layer basically doesn't get transposed when we change the key, but the tonal layer gets transposed. And I find it's a lot cleaner way of being able to change the key of your kick without affecting that kind of like the sort of punch of your transient. And would you look at that? The phase of the kick to bass ratio is like almost perfect now that we've changed the key, but left the transient at the sort of original key that it was decomposed at. So because I've kind of extended the body of the kick, I might just want to adjust the sidechain that I've kind of created for the bass to give that kind of first bass less punch. So of course then we can go and just, export this kick sample by just dragging it out here and then loading it into our original sampler that I had created that I wasn't too happy with the sound of. Just boom, and then like I mentioned, there's that little bit of delay or latency from rendering, but that's not too hard to fix. There's actually also a snap to 0 crossing here in the traditional sampler as well. So we can just quickly do that. Boom. And Bob is your uncle. Okay, let's see how it works decomposing and resampling bass. So I'm just going to copy paste all of our MIDIs across, and let's actually just turn that off and unmute this guy. So for now it's going to be crazy because this actually kicks at the moment. So let's just initialize real quick, and I've got a sample. I think it's the exact same sample that I used in this track for the bass, in fact, multi-samples that I made. So I'm actually just going to load up a C over here. Okay, so I've got this bass sample. Let's see how it decomposes. So here I found, again, what you want to do is solo the noise and try get it to get as little kind of tone in the noise by adjusting these parameters here. Cool, so far so good. So the noise layer, of course, we won't need to do too much envelope control on because it's only really adjusting that, it's only really catching that kind of first pluck. However, there still might be a little bit of noise coming through just because of the way that it synthesizes and stuff. So I'll usually just create an envelope on that one anyway. Let's jump over here and click on sync, and let's find the 16th and just snap this to that so we don't have any overlap when we're doing 16th bass lines. So let's hear how this sounds. Okay, let's see if we can resynthesize this tonal layer without creating too much havoc. So let's see how it sounds when we put a bass that's got like a progression in there. And let's see if it's kind of usable enough to use, in a track, which would be pretty interesting, as a sampler, being able to change the pitch and stuff like that. Actually, what I want to do is just jump back in here and, like I did in the previous example, let's just turn key follow off on the pitch over here. Cool, so that's about it. I hope you guys enjoyed my walkthrough of the decomposing system in Backbone. Yeah, let me know what you think in the comments. A big thanks to IDM Mag, proud supporters of the dance music scene and my channel. If you liked the video, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. See you guys next time.